Hi all, thanks so much for joining us here at the LC. If you've been listening to me, you know that before I start these talks, I like to be comfortable. So having my lumbar pillow in the upright position here in the chair that I'm sitting in is a must. If I'm uncomfortable, I can't do a podcast. I just can't. And my fellow podcasters, you get it. So now I'm in a good position and I'm ready. The question is, are you ready? Are you ready to hear the unconventional? Everything that they aren't talking about. I'm telling you, friends, there are very few podcasts that I listen to because most of them are absolute junk. I feel like people talk too much about nothing at all. They focus too much on politics. They focus too much on pop culture. But it's a lot of commentary, not really any teaching, not really anything anybody can learn from. I think what the world needs is more people who are teaching, more people who are willing, able, and actually ready to full on and full out instruct others on what to do. And so that's what's missing. And I like to say that this podcast, the Lecture Center, fills that void because we do have a void, a great void, when it comes to podcasting. So if you discovered me by chance, that's fantastic. And I think actually that was an act of providence. It's no mistake that you're here. I often say that the fact that we actually have so many podcasts that are lacking in quality is a testament, and it's really a sign of the times that we're in. And I'm sure you can agree with me on this, friends. People's minds aren't being challenged. People are eating what they're being fed, and they're not really inclined to seek anything that has any substance. I suppose that's why I've always been enthralled with philosophy, because it's substantive. It challenges me to do what most people refuse to do, and that is to think. So that's why you're here. That's what we're about at the LC. We delve into contentious topics of discussion that I think are quite expansive. Topics such as technology, which includes AI. We talk a little bit about politics, but for the purpose of giving an example. Politics are used more or less as an example of the state of mankind, where we are spiritually. So this is really a little bit of political philosophy, a little bit of spiritual philosophy, educational philosophy. It is all based in philosophy. So that's where my head is, and those are just some of the things that I think about on a daily basis. And I do believe that all of the aforementioned influences my daily life, and I hope that it would influence yours. It probably does, whether you know it or not. So let's talk about where we are now. I've said that we, meaning humanity, is at a crossroads. I've said that in some of my essays, and I feel like we're at the point in time where we must decide who we want to be and where we desire to go. Now, what do I mean by that? In short, we are at the end of an age, and we are simultaneously approaching the threshold of a new era. And this happens all the time. Life is cyclical, friends. Everything goes around and comes back around again. But most people have no idea, because most people are disconnected from themselves and also nature. You see, man is nature and nature is man, because we are one with nature. Everything that has existed will exist again. All that revolves will eventually, at some point in time, evolve. And here we are at that point in time. And this is the time where we as men must make a definitive decision about our own spiritual advancement. Now, before I explain what this is, let me tell you what it isn't. Spiritual advancement has nothing to do with your religious faith. Sometimes people interchange the word religion and spiritual. You can't do that, I'm telling you. It's really not the same thing. If you think about religion, you can let's say this. I want to say this without really trying to offend people, because I've said before that religion was wholeheartedly a part of my life, and it's where I am today. But the fact of the matter is that everything that you think you're doing as it pertains to your religion is actually, well, I think, an act of futility. Because life is simply not lived in a box. Life is not rigid. Life is a constant flow of movement. Therefore, religion is, in my eyes, primitive, because it's rooted in tradition and culture. And again, I say all of this not to say don't be a part of it, abandon it. I don't say that. I actually say the opposite. I say that religion is a stepping stone. It's where I started before evolving to where I am now. And evolution is perpetual, so I will go beyond where I am now, and I hope to do that. That's what I want. So who am I to tell somebody to stop having faith in Jesus or stop praying to Buddha? That's not why I speak. I speak what I know, and I reveal things that have been revealed to me. So much of the things that I know are revealed in my mind's eye, not as something factual, but as something comprehensive that is beyond the superficial scope of understanding. One of the things that I questioned from a very young age, and I no longer question anymore, is why people don't want to take risks and why people are willing to forego their own dreams just for the sake of security. Actually, the answer is in the question. In other words, why do people marry someone? Why would anybody get married to someone that they don't actually love? Why would they take a job they hate? Why even bother to have children if you really don't want children? Why do people accept a mediocre life? Friends, I now understand why they do it, but it's a problem. It's a disturbing issue because when people live, quote unquote live, when they live this way, they never get the full experience that is life. And that's deeply troubling to me. The way I see it and the way that it is being revealed to my mind is that most people are simply trying to survive. And that's not the worst thing, but it's not helpful either. Let me explain, because this is something not widely understood, because life is lived very rigidly. And the masses operate out of fear, which, by the way, I don't consider true living at all. It's just not living, because a so-called life that is lived in fear is a life that is under subjugation. Friends, fear inhibits people from living to their true potential. It actually halts growth. Isn't that not the purpose of life? I mean, think about that. Is it not to grow, experience, and build good character? Well, apparently for most, this just simply isn't the case, because the very things that people need, meaning the conditions in their life that they need to build good character, they actually run from because they're afraid to confront their fears. You see, behind that door that's labeled fear, we will discover that there is opportunity. And this opportunity is to become whoever you want. And it's also the opportunity to achieve whatever you want. Whatever you want to do, whoever you want to be. The opportunity is there if you would just confront your fear. Face it. But no man can prevail in the face of fear without some kind of spiritual grounding, which has less to do with worshiping Jesus and more to do with affirming the self. Now, what I just said was loaded. I talked about Jesus, and I didn't necessarily talk about him in a favorable way, as most people would think. But that's not really it. That's not it. Because what I'm telling you has less to do with others, has less to do with religious figureheads, has less to do with symbols of man and archetypes of man, or archetypes in general, and more to do with you affirming your own existence and the fact that you matter. You see, life meets us where we are, and if you want to do something great and you want to be somebody even greater, you can't achieve that greatness unless you're willing to overcome fear. And so this is where we are. This is what it requires to move from the old dark ages into the new world order, which is the age of light and life. And that's all. There's no magic or special formula. It only requires the relinquishment, that's what I'm trying to say, of fear and self-doubt. Now let me explain how fear masquerades as something else, because there are people who think they're not afraid. They would contest me right now. What are you talking about? Everything I've ever wanted to do, I've done it. And they would boldly say that they are unafraid. Fear is not independent of man. If fear is covert, it's because men, I should say, have cloaked it or have chosen to hide behind it. Fear reveals itself in the mind's eye. And men know when they're afraid. Men know when they're anxious. Men know when they can't confront something that they have really no knowledge of. Fear is largely having to do with the fear of the unknown, the fear of failure, the fear of defeat, the fear of being a nobody, the fear of being alone. Fear is a void. It's really being afraid of the emptiness that is life. All of life is emptiness, which is very, very profound when you really stop and think about it. It's up to man to produce and to create and make life, evolve it. He gives the life. Friends, there's evidence of this in the scriptures. That's what's in Genesis. That's what it's about. The first verse, as a matter of fact. So it's easier to hide rather than to face something head on, because most people don't want to deal with their fear and also their insecurity. So I want to give an example of what humankind is actually facing as it closes out the old world, or should I say the age of darkness. And perhaps I should give some kind of explanation on what I mean by old age. Old age is actually the dark age, and it means men have no recollection of their spiritual origin and identity with God and nature. That's what it means to be dark. The souls of men have become more attached to their physical or corporeal nature. In other words, men have no ties, no understanding, no memory of their spiritual origin. So they have now attached themselves or their soul to the tangible world. And that's all there is. And that is considered spiritual blindness or darkness. And that is the age that we are moving out of. And because of this, you will see a shift in the world order. So men believe that their identity is rooted in their worldly lineage. And what do I mean by that? I'm talking about you coming from your mother's womb and your father and all of that, and your race and your nationality and culture, tradition. That's generally what people think, or who people think they are. If you ask a person, what are you? They'll start talking about all of those things, because those are worldly souls. Those are souls that are in spiritual darkness. They have no knowledge. They can't even conceive of an existence that is beyond the world. And these souls desire to preserve that identity. It's very serious, friends, because without their culture, without their race, without their tribe, they don't exist. And we can see this all over the world. I'm not just talking about the Western world. People working to preserve their traditions. They think it's a noble thing to do. But friends, I'm here to tell you that nothing can be preserved in the world. Not really. Because it is the intention of nature for the soul to evolve from the world. You see, you have to understand what the world truly is in order to know why we cannot remain in the world. The world is actually a place of learning, a place of growth, a place of evolution. We're here to not conquer nature, but to allow nature to provide the necessary conditions for us to advance, and that is to advance spiritually. And when I talk about spiritually, or spiritual evolution or advancement, I am talking about your character. Because in the end, you're not your flesh, you're not your bone, you're not what you look like. You are who you have developed and the character that you have developed within. So this spiritual blindness is so profound that men are unable to comprehend it. They don't know that they're spiritually blind. And to take this further, I would say that even if they were told bluntly that they have no real tie to the natural world, they would refute the claim. And they would do so emphatically, because to hear that, to even hear, you don't belong here, you can't stay here, to hear that induces a great fear. Everything that I'm saying right now makes them terribly afraid, and they would challenge me to the death. And what this fear is, why they are so afraid, is because they're afraid of the fear of demise. Because what you must understand is that worldly people, do not believe in God or any kind of higher spiritual nature or a higher power. To them, the world is all there is. And the denial of the existence of worldly authority, or world systems, or even some kind of world dominance is downright frightening, because without the world, where would they go and who would they be? You see, these are people who have no sense of selfhood or independence from the world. The world authorities and the world systems are their master. And this is because they reject self-reliance, self-accountability, self-motivation, and self-love. And in its place, they embrace self-aggrandizement, vanity, and self-loathing. Friends, yet again, most people have no idea. They do not know this. They're blind to this. And the worst part is that they want to be blind. That's the definition of ignorance. It's not that you don't know. It's that you don't want to know. The word ignore is in the word ignorance. You see, they don't want to do the necessary work of self-improvement. That's what this is really all about. Because it requires that they grow up and face life's challenges. And this is also largely about identity, which is tied to self-worth. You see, without a strong sense of knowing who you are, there is no direction or purpose for one to exist. The thought that a man has no relative existence is a thought that men of the world simply cannot bear. And it is a horror. And it brings them feelings of sheer terror. That's why they can't even bear the thought. You see, there is no spiritual grounding. And when there's no spiritual grounding, men don't have the courage to release the material world. They can't part ways with it. That's why they can't die. And that's a deep, deep podcast that we could go into at some point. Because that's what death is really about. It's about release and letting go. And those souls who are tied to the world cannot do it. They're afraid to do it because the world is all they know. You must understand that you don't all of a sudden become spiritual. You don't all of a sudden start to believe in anything, a world or anything beyond this material world. You don't just automatically get like that because you die. People think when you die, you automatically become something that you're not. It doesn't work that way. You have to develop this now while you're here on earth. So we're dying now. We're not dying when the soul leaves the body and the blood starts drying up and we start to decay. That's not death. That's decay. Okay? And everything goes back to whence it came. The body comes from the earth and it goes back to the earth. That's the cycle of life. But again, this is very, very serious. Because these souls that refuse to relinquish the world systems, the world authorities, and everything that the world is at the moment, because they're resisting change, they do not want to move over into, or should I say, they don't want this transference of power. They do not want to move from the dark ages into the age of light. They reject anything that is spiritual. They will reject what I'm saying right now. Let me take a sip. Let me take a sip of water. They want to remain as they are. So if we want to see this, the evidence of everything I just said before our own eyes, let's look at the world. Let's look at the world we are in, the societies that we're in, the country that, whatever country you're in. We can see that the world is in upheaval and disarray. The United States, under the Trump administration, is radically shifting the balance of power back into the hands of America. And this is happening so as to build a more expansive empire, so as to preserve America's hegemony. But most people, I would say, most of the average working class men don't understand why this is necessary. And they're afraid. They fear being left behind and also losing the status quo that has functioned to preserve their livelihood. You see, that's what this is all about, friends. The preservation of the status quo. Because these worldly people do not want any change. They're afraid of being left behind. Because they don't want to evolve. We're in the end of days. That's where we are. Men have an unrelenting desire to preserve. And fear drives them to fight to the death. And I mean that in actuality, friends. They will kill to preserve the world, because the way they see it is that radical change, which is the change that ensures growth or expansion, is contrary to their nature. You must understand that people who live for security have no desire to grow. That's why they reject change. What they want is to remain stagnant. They don't want to have to change. They don't want to have to mature or accept something new, even if it's good for them. As it stands, I can say that the Trump administration is upsetting the world greatly, because the world is in fear of loss. And the mainstream media is doing the very evil of fueling their fears by outright lying to them. What is the mainstream media saying, friends? It's telling them that they will lose their rights, their quality of life, and even their money. See, we're hearing it. The loss of Medicaid, Social Security, voting rights, women's so-called reproductive health rights, the right to live as a trans person. All of these things they are deathly afraid of because of their attachment to the material world. And this fear is slowly boiling up to what will eventually become mass hysteria, which will indeed promote violence and loss of life. Again, this is perpetrated by the media. And this will happen. And the same media that's instigating this will turn around and blame Trump. This is what evil is and what evil has always done, especially at the end of days. Because it knows instinctively that its time is short. The days are short, friends. So what we're really talking about is not political or societal warfare, but a battle of goodness and evil. If you've grasped what I've been saying thus far, you will see that this battle is not of what people think is good or bad, but indeed it is the purposeful act of getting in the way of or hindering the laws of nature. Now, in order to fully comprehend this, I really suggest that you tune into the LC more often. And what I mean by this is to subscribe to my YouTube channel and also this podcast. Because here at the Lecture Center, we go into universal law. We talk about what it is and how adhering to it can influence and guide your personal life by rewarding you and causing goodness to be with you all the days of your life. This is the truth, my dear friends, but it's only true for those who live by the laws of nature. And I call these laws universality. Those who reject universality do so in fear and ignorance. Now, I take no issue with this per se, but let us note the moral evil resides in these people, these kind of people, these souls who do the adversarial work of hindering other souls from evolving. Friends, the universe gives abundantly to those who work not against it, but alongside it. Let me tell you this. We all know many laws of nature, and a lot of these laws are talked about in physics, in chemistry, in the world of science. We know that these laws exist because they are evident. We know gravity is evident. We can look at the phases of the moon with our naked eye. We are aware that men and women biologically are just different. All of these things have to do with laws of nature. Now, of course, many of the laws of nature, there are many more that have yet to be discovered. And it seems like these days, men don't think it's their moral obligation to seek and even desire to discover. I tell you, friends, it is. We must try to find out what secrets the universe holds. That's why it's imperative that we fund missions to Mars, that we support anyone who wants to explore the universe. And there's also more exploration that needs to happen on Earth. It's also important to make newfound medical discoveries and biological discoveries. We must do these things, and this is what it means to innovate and explore, and I'm all for that. This is what true education entails. And it's missing. Education is not explorative. That's why the students are bored. What we do see in intermediate and higher education is activism of all kinds. We see environmental activism. We see activism or feminist activism, DEI activism, CRT activism. But let me go back to the environmental activism, because that's the one that really bothers me. They vilify the use of data centers. They vilify the exploration of Mars. They don't want us to drill for natural resources. All of this is because of the environment. This is an aim. Why? Because man is on Earth to advance himself, and that means better his living conditions. We must learn to take the raw materials that nature provides and further develop them. How do you think we ended up with the locomotive? How do you think we ended up with airplanes? We used the laws of nature. We developed raw materials. We have to do that. We can't just stop where we are now. We have to continue to do that. This is the reason why we must expand our empire. Men have been doing this from the beginning, and nature has never stopped men from building glorious kingdoms upon the earth, so long as we acknowledge that there is providence. The problem is that when man decides he wants to build, and he wants to take everything that he knows and reach the highest feats, he does not acknowledge God. And what do I mean? I don't mean praying to Jesus. I don't mean praying 5 times a day facing Mecca. I mean, to acknowledge God is to acknowledge that there are natural laws, and we must revere those laws, highly revere them. Not say, oh, no. A woman can be anything she feels. A person, whatever they feel, that is a mockery of God. As long as we continue to abide by the laws of nature, we will receive in abundance from nature herself. So men believe that expansion is evil. Some men. So we're supposed to just stay small. We're supposed to just be minute. Yeah, because those people are small. Those people are self-diminished. Expansion they call colonization. Of course, you have to take over other people, weaker people, people that are not as evolved, primitive people. You see, they think it's evil because they see those who desire to grow and become powerful as a master. And they see themselves as slaves, subjugated, or should I say subject to the whims of power-hungry men. That's the way they see it. They see that as an evil and make No mistake about it, friends. They are subject to the masters. They're subject to the men of this earth that have learned to master the universe. But that's their own doing because they refuse to face fear. They don't want to be self-reliant and take life by the helm. They know this, but they think they can have it both ways. They think that a slave should have the right to control his master. That's why they want to take the rich and tell the rich what to do with their own damn money. Not me. Who do they think they are? Let me be clear. When I use the word master and slave, these words are not being used in a superficial way. I'm referring to how men think and also how men choose to live. Those who do not take action and self-direct their own life are slaves, while those who face life's challenges courageously are masters of their own destiny. And it is those people who are masters. These are the leaders of the world, and they tell the slaves what to do because they lack self-direction and self-motivation. Friends, they actually want to be sheltered, clothed, and fed, and told what to do. That's why they want universal health care. That's why they want social programs, because they like the idea of somebody taking care of them and making them feel secure. They don't like the idea of having to be independent and stand on their own 2 feet and make sure that they have health insurance, make sure that they eat, make sure that they have a roof over their head. They want big government to do it because government is their master. Government is their God. These are the most dependent people on the face of the earth. Yet they want to be treated with dignity, they want to be treated with respect, and they want to be considered equals. They're angry. They're angry and jealous of those who have the will to self-determine. And that's the source of their self-loathing. That's why they're so hateful. That's why they're so jealous. That's why they like to destroy. If you notice, they like to destroy. If we didn't have the law, they'd burn every building down in every major city in the country. I've talked about these self-diminished men before. They're small on the inside, and they want everyone else to cower to fear and self-doubt the same way that they do. That's why they like to be victims, and why they love to vilify the higher men, those of power and authority. Again, friends, by authority, I mean not your authority or mine, but an authority over themselves. You see, a true master is a master over himself. Master doesn't mean he's asserting or imposing onto anyone else. You see, men who are unafraid, eager to live and accomplish greatness, are drivers of their own destiny. They are the authority over their life. What they want to do, they do, and they do it without anyone's permission. And those who are self-diminished and have no self-confidence and no self-worth, they hate that. They hate the fact that you, the man who's his own master, who's his own authority, who can speak for himself, who's independent, is so self-affirmed and self-assured, can live his own life. They hate that. They hate the fact that you can do that and be that. Boils their blood. So what do? Well, I should say, what do they want to do? They want to be your dictator. You see, that's who a true dictator is. A true tyrant. That's where they come from. They're small men. They're self-diminished men. They're not great men. They're small. What they want to do is become your dictator. Become your tyrant. And they want to be the arbiters of justice. That's why they want to suppress any kind of human progress. They want to hold back innovation because they don't want men to advance. They like the idea of they themselves being at the top, but everybody else beneath them. And all of what I'm saying here is true, and it's happening as we speak. It's human nature. It will always happen. Everything that these so-called morally upright people are doing to hinder the Trump administration, yes, we're going back to politics, not only hinder his administration, but the wealthiest tech innovators and those who have revolutionized e-commerce, such as Bezos, they're doing the things that they're doing because they want to enslave those souls. They're afraid of Trump. They're afraid of Musk. They're afraid of Sam Altman and even more. There are more, but they're not in the public eye. You see, the Dark Ages have really shown us, and these ages are indicative of man's fear of change, spiritual growth, and his own evolution. His evolution from a primitive being to a more evolved spiritual being. Men who are afraid to evolve, they cling to the past. They cling to the old world that is now becoming primitive. That's what's happening. These are the people who are afraid of AI and are outright against it. And I've talked about those people. Some of them are educators. And they are, in fact, the descendants of those who rejected the electrolyte, who rejected automobiles, and even had issue with the internet. These people start wars for the purpose of maintaining the status quo. That's what the slaveholders did they not? They had a civil war in the United States over slavery. They wanted to continue with slavery, that inhumane act, because those were primitive, barbaric people who enjoyed what they were doing. And they took no issue with the fact that what they were doing was inhumane. But as you see, nature wasn't on their side, because anything that goes against nature, anything that a man does, any adversarial work that a man does on earth or act that a man does will not prevail. You see, these souls work not to advance man, but to hold him back, to hinder him. Again, to maintain the status quo. They actually reject moving into the new age, which is the age of light, and also the ushering in of philosophical insight. This age of light that I've been talking about will illuminate the souls of men, meaning that all the things that I'm telling you right now, men will be more privy to. They will have more understanding of their spiritual nature, why they're here, what the purpose of life is, and the moral compass will become clearer. Men will know that there are certain things that they can't do. There's a certain way that they can't live. They will see the destructive nature of their own decisions. And they will see how their decision making leads to the destruction of not only their own life, but their descendants. So those minds who are receptive to spiritual illumination will no longer be subjected to propaganda, which is really a form of hypnotism. Those who have been propagandized have a sleeping mind, and that's why the media can easily influence it. That kind of mind really can't think. It can only react to its prime emotion, which is fear, and that's why these souls are violent and easily triggered. Friends, that's why wild animals act violently. They don't have the mind of an evolved man. Therefore, anything that approaches them threatens their life. So they act out based on preserving their life. And this is the same with the primitive-minded person. Friends, these are dangerous people. If you find yourself in their company, I actually warn you not to debate them. I've seen people debate them, and it's dangerous. Don't try to convince them that they're wrong. Don't get in the street trying to argue with them. You could lose your life. And it's simply not worth it. And I say this because people are losing their life at the hands of these brutes. That's the nature of the primitive mind. It's a mind that has no basic in logic, rationale, or civility. Because it's a mind that's debased and demoralized. Now, how do people become that way? Well, I told you, it comes from the refusal to grow. The mind, just like anything in nature, must evolve. Friends, man is a spiritual being. That's his true identity. The spirit moves. It's not stagnant and cannot be stored or stowed away in a box. It must be free to be. Therefore, those who reject growth and desire to remain as they are, petrified in matter, frozen in time, rejecting expansion, rejecting the new world, rejecting the laws of nature, must remain as they are. You see, by denying the identity of a woman, accepting that men can marry men, promoting sexual deviances like bestiality and pedophilia, teaching children not about using the mind to discover, but calcifying it with dogma and political indoctrination is contrary to the law of universality and works in opposition to God. I've been saying that the entire podcast. Friends, there is no moral law that is on the side of men who reject nature. Nature is immutable and is the moral law. Men, as it stands, can't arbitrarily make the definition of a woman as they feel it ought to be. We can't change the meaning of marriage to suit our own culture. We can't change the meaning of pronouns. Why? Because language is rooted in something spiritual. Words have meaning. Nothing with true meaning can be made to mold a paradigm that resembles vacuity. Those who honor universality or universal law abide in it, and those will prevail. Those people, rather, will prevail. And that's why the order of the world is changing. No matter what wars are fought and how many lives are lost, those who work for advancement will hold the power and will indeed succeed. And you will see this, mark my word, the Trump administration will succeed. And I just told you why. Now, the saddest part of this is that so many people are in ignorance, and that's because they don't care to know. They have no desire to learn. They're arrogant and they're self-righteous. And that's what we find nowadays. People ready to knock you out if you speak for life. They just can't deal with dissent. They can't face the fact that they are practicing and acting in evil. And the very evil is that they are self-righteous. They think they're morally upright. They're the moral authority or moral superiority. And they like to point the finger at anyone who doesn't believe what they believe. You see, they parade about as sanctimonious people who measure your wrongs and my wrongs, and if they could stone you, they would. I told you, they're moralists. And they really believe themselves to be like God. And they're the furthest from God because God desires the merciful. The scriptures say he resists the proud and draws near to the humble of heart. But of course, when you operate in pride, you can't see it. You think you are the humble. You think you are the good person. And that very thought is to man's detriment. Friends, I've said it before. We are all imperfect beings. We are works in progress. Hopefully, desiring to do better, to be better, to evolve. And that's what spiritual growth entails. Friends, I want to thank you so much for joining us here at the LC. We're looking forward to your return and hopefully some dialogue. I don't want to think I'm just talking to myself. Please feel free to check out our YouTube, Substack, and Medium handles, and also our X handle. You can really find us on X. That's where we like to be, and we don't lurk, and we express ourselves very openly there. We'd love to hear from all of you. The time is now.